There is a kind of love that is not noisy, not hasty, not needing to be declared. It grows quietly, like an underground stream that seeps through each layer of the earth, silently but intensely. The person who feels it may not even know that he or she is in love, not because they want to hide it, but because they have not yet had time to touch the depth of the emotion that is rising from within. And sometimes, in the fragile distance between not realizing it and the feeling that is gradually forming, a silent sign resonates more clearly than any words. Have you ever caught someone's eyes following you, instinctively, then quickly turning away as if they were surprised at themselves? Have you ever felt a caring presence, a gentle protection, nameless, without reason, just someone there, at the right time, in the right way? That is not a coincidence. That is when love speaks before consciousness. Love, when it is still in the unconscious, does not appear through confessions or sweet gestures. It appears through contradictions, moments of silence that last longer than usual, through actions that contradict what the other person has just said. He may say that he does not think about you, but still remembers every single thing you share. He may affirm that he does not want anything deep, but is uncomfortable when you are intimate with others. Those paradoxes, if only viewed through reason, are easily misunderstood. But if we observe with a slower heartbeat, with deeper feelings, we will see that they are very real signs. That is the space of unrecognized love, where emotions precede awareness, where reason has not yet intervened. There, the heart is still walking silently, as if it knows the way home, even though the person carrying it does not yet understand the journey. In this video, you will be guided to look more clearly into that gap, the gap between not sure and in love, where a small gesture, an unintentional reaction becomes a valuable clue. Together we will enter the land where the unconscious speaks, where deep emotions are waiting to be named. If you have ever doubted someone's feelings, not because they are cruel, but because they are contradictory, then this is the journey for you. A journey to see the invisible, to understand a love that has not yet been spoken. And if you are willing to open your heart to listen to what has not been said, to see what the other person is also learning to recognize, then stay. Because there are loves that do not begin with words of love, but with a look that does not dare to hold for more than a second. And you, with your sensitivity, can be the first person to read the first page of that book, the book called Love Unrecognized. Unconscious love is a subtle phenomenon, not present in flamboyant expressions or loud declarations, but an undercurrent in the soul. It exists where emotions speak before reason has time to respond. And sometimes, the person in love does not even realize that he or she is being swept up in such a strong wave of emotions. It is not an escape. It is a form of awareness that has not yet formed, an emotion that has lived, has crept into behavior, into the eyes, into a constant presence, but has not been named. And that is what makes unconscious love such a strange experience, contradictory, quiet, but also deep and heartbreakingly real. According to Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, much of the human inner life lies outside the control of consciousness. There are parts of us called shadows that contain aspects that are denied, hidden, or never acknowledged. In that darkness, there may be love, a love that a man feels but cannot explain, because it is the opposite of the self he has learned to build all his life: rational, controlled, strong. In many cultural environments, men are taught that emotions are secondary, that vulnerability is something to be hidden, that expressing feelings is a risk of being hurt. And so, When true love appears, soft, tender, emotional, it hits hard against the wall that has been built for a long time. When that happens, the feeling does not disappear. It just takes on another form, a hidden action, a silent look, an occasional burst of concern. You will see him appear when you need him, even when no one calls. You will see him listen without asking, remember without explaining. You will see him sometimes jealous, without saying it, upset when you talk about someone else, even when he smiles as if nothing happened. That is when the heart is working silently. It is love speaking in a language that he has not yet learned. When a man is not yet aware that he is in love, he will express it through contradictions. He can withdraw when you approach, but not move too far. He can be silent, but always present. He can say that he does not need anything deep, but is hurt if you do not pay attention to him anymore. Each of these actions is a piece of the puzzle. Only when put together can we see the whole picture. A heart that is beating erratically, trying to step out of the unconscious into the light of recognition. Unconscious love, therefore, is not something vague or unreal. It is very real, so real that it can make a person change their behavior, emotions, and even their daily routine, without even realizing why. They are confused by their feelings, and that confusion is the most vivid proof that love is happening, without reason, without plan. The important thing is that you, the observer from the outside, do not rush to demand confirmation, because if you see that change, if you feel the small signals that his reason has not yet recognized, then you have already stepped one foot into his inner world. A world where love does not come with words, but with presence, unexpected, inexplicable, but true as its nature. Sometimes what people need is not a clear answer, but someone sensitive enough to listen to the things that are not said, patient enough to stay while the other person is still learning to admit the love he is feeling, and also strong enough not to equate contradiction with deception. Unconscious love is not a mystery to be deciphered, but a process to be accompanied. And if you are here, listening, observing, feeling, perhaps you are the one accompanying a heart that is slowly awakening on the journey from unconsciousness to conscious love. A journey that is quiet, but powerful enough to transform both. There are things that cannot be hidden, even if they are not spoken of. Love is one of them, especially when it is not fully realized. When a man does not dare to admit to himself that he is in love, then that love does not disappear. It just changes its presence, and the way it is present, often through paradoxes. A paradox is when actions contradict words. When he says that you are nothing special, but still knows exactly why you are tired today. When he denies being jealous, but his face darkens when you talk about another man. When he appears indifferent, but his eyes follow you longer than necessary. These actions do not follow logic. But love is not a problem with a clear solution. In the unconscious, emotions always precede reason. They do not follow plans, do not wait until they are ready. So when a man doesn't know he's in love, the paradoxes are the strongest signs for you to realize it. You may see him withdraw, avoid, suddenly become cold, right after a moment of intimacy. That doesn't mean he doesn't care. On the contrary, it's often a sign that he cares so much that he feels out of control. He doesn't know how to handle those emotions, so he reacts in the most familiar way, withdrawing to regain the initiative. But even though he withdraws, he doesn't disappear. He's still there, still silently observing, still keeping a distance that's not too far, just enough for you to feel his presence. Or sometimes you see him angry for no reason, getting angry when you share something very normal, or becoming passive right when you need clarity. Those reactions aren't intentional to hurt. They're manifestations of a confused inner self, wanting to get closer, but also afraid to face what his emotions really bring. This is the paradox of unconscious love. The more a man tries to deny it, the more it becomes apparent. The more he tries to control it, the more he loses control. The more he insists on nothing, the more he acts as if everything makes sense. In those moments, the important thing is not to find a solution, but to recognize the emotional frequency that is being emitted. An averted look when you touch the right thing that hurts him. A spontaneous action when you are sad. Even though he says nothing, he still chooses to stay. An emotional reaction despite his usual calm appearance. It is not a real conflict, but a manifestation of something that has not been integrated. The heart is going first, and reason has not yet caught up. If you only listen to the words, you might think that he does not love. But if you feel the undercurrents, you will see clearly. Love is present, it just does not have a name. That man is not playing with emotions. He is struggling with himself. And you, if you are sensitive enough to see that, will not rush to judge or demand. Because you know, there are loves that need a moment of silence to grow. Need someone who does not leave when faced with paradox, but stays to witness the truth gradually emerge through each small action. Invisible love always leaves traces. In the eyes that dare not hold on for long. In the negative words, but the hand still does not let go. In each moment of confusion that reason cannot cover up. Those paradoxes, if you know how to look, are the map leading to a love that has not been acknowledged, but is very real. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make your unconscious conscious, it will run your life, and you will call it destiny." This quote applies not only to abstract psychological aspects, but also to the deepest things in every relationship, especially love. When a man falls in love and doesn't realize it, it's not simply because he's not paying enough attention or isn't deep enough. Sometimes that love is locked in the dark, what Jung called the shadow, the part that is hidden from consciousness. The shadow in Jungian psychology doesn't have the negative connotation that many people think. It's not evil, but everything that people have ever denied, dared not admit, or weren't allowed to express. For men, especially in a social environment where emotions are seen as a weakness, that shadow often contains emotional weakness, vulnerability, fear of rejection, and the capacity for deep love. Love, when it is in the shadow, does not disappear. It only manifests itself in roundabout, indirect ways, even in ways that are contrary to what is truly desired. A man who loves but has not yet acknowledged it may suddenly withdraw when the relationship becomes closer. He may pick fights over trivial matters, or act indifferent when you need his attention. These behaviors may seem like indifference, but they are actually a form of defense. The shadow is speaking up, trying to protect the ego from an emotion it is not ready to face. Think of the shadow as a guard inside the soul. It does not allow the vulnerable parts to come out too soon. When love begins to take root, a man feels like he is entering unfamiliar territory, one he no longer has control over. He fears losing his independence, fears dependence, fears facing parts of himself that he has never dared to touch, loneliness, the need to be loved, or even memories of past abandonments. That is why when love touches the dark side, it does not follow a smooth path. It creates a tug of war. One side wants to move forward, the other side wants to retreat. One side wants to connect deeply, the other feels it is too dangerous. And if you do not understand that psychological mechanism, you can easily mistake the withdrawal for the end. But in fact, it can be just an instinctive self-defense, a way for a man to try to deal with an emotion that is too big, too real, too unexpected. Jung called the process of human maturity individuation, the journey in which each individual gradually integrates the divided parts of the soul. And love, when it touches the darkness, becomes one of the most powerful forces to begin that journey. Loving someone deeply can make a man look at himself, not as he was taught to be, but as he truly is. And in that place, love becomes a tool of healing, not because the other person is perfect, but because they accidentally awaken parts of us that are forgotten. When you love a man, in the midst of a battle between his heart and the darkness, the greatest thing you can do is not judge, not push, not make him name what he doesn't yet understand, but be there as a safe presence, allowing him to face himself without hiding. That's why truly deep relationships often begin not with grand promises, but with a quiet process, with moments of honest confrontation, with unspoken empathy. When love is nurtured long enough in the light, darkness is no longer an enemy. It becomes the material for forming a love that has depth, understanding, and the ability to last. So if you are with a man who is contradictory, sometimes distant, sometimes so close that you believe he is in love, remember, he may be in love, but that love is overcoming a layer of darkness that has accumulated for a long time. And you, if you are sensitive enough not to withdraw, can become a part of that personal journey, not only helping him touch love, but also helping him touch himself. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, there is a subtle but profound concept called the anima, the archetype of the feminine element that exists within a man. This is not a specific image of a flesh and blood woman, but a symbol of emotion, intuition, softness, sensitivity, and the ability to connect deeply. The anima is the door that leads a man to the part of his soul that he is often separated from, the part that allows him to love and be loved completely. When a man meets a woman to whom he cannot explain why he is so attracted, not simply because of her appearance, not necessarily because of what she says or does, it may be the moment when his anima is awakened. He does not just see her but sees a part of himself reflected in her, a part that he has never touched, never allowed to exist. The presence of a woman at this time is more than a relationship. She becomes a symbol, a mirror. Through her, he began to feel the emotions he had denied, the desire to be cared for, the vulnerability, the desire for intimacy, the need to care and share. Those emotions were always there, but hidden under the strong, rational, and independent shell qualities that society often stereotyped men as. And then he was confused, because that man was not used to seeing himself in a vulnerable state. He did not know how to name this strange feeling. He wanted to be close, but also afraid of being caught up. He felt relieved to be with her, but also confused, because the emotions were too real, too strong. That was the anima effect, a stirring from within, forcing a man to face the feminine side of himself that he had long suppressed unconsciously. In this state, the love he felt was not only directed towards that woman, it was also a vibration with his own inner self. The woman is like a living symbol. Not only does he love her, but she reminds him of his original self. That is why the feeling becomes intense, deep, even uncontrollable, because it is no longer love, but a spiritual encounter. But if that feminine side has never been recognized by him, this process can become chaotic. He may idealize the woman, and then be disappointed when she is not as perfect as his unconscious image. He may confuse love with the need to possess, deep connection with the fear of dependence, and sometimes he withdraws, not because he no longer loves her, but because he does not understand who he is reacting to her, or to the unnamed part of himself. For the woman in this relationship, it is important to be clear-headed enough not to dissolve into illusion. Don't mistake yourself for being everything to that man, when in fact, you are just a reflection of a larger inner process. She needs to be strong enough to be present as a support, while maintaining her own identity, so as not to become a shadow of an ideal image. Because when a man begins to love through his anima, that is when he enters a journey of self-discovery at the deepest level. And if the relationship is built on a foundation of understanding this, both will experience love not only as an emotion, but as a journey of transformation. A journey where love becomes a means for the man to reconnect with his heart, and the woman is not only the one who is loved, but also the one who opens the way for him to return to himself. Love, when it comes from the deepest level of the soul, is not just a bond between two people. It is an invitation to embark on a journey of one's own. Carl Jung called it individuation, an inner journey in which one continually confronts the shadow, overcomes defense mechanisms, and becomes more whole. Not by eliminating imperfections, but by integrating all that has been rejected. And strangely enough, love itself, when deep enough, true enough, is one of the most powerful agents that leads people down that path. When a man falls in love without realizing it, you can see a strange state. He feels pulled towards you by an invisible force, but at the same time struggles to maintain his independence. He may want to be close, but he dares not stay long. He cannot explain why your presence makes him feel safe and secure, but also insecure. Why does your smile make him feel like himself, but also makes him feel like he's losing something? Actually, it's not just a normal feeling of love. It's a confrontation with his ego, with the defense system he's built up all his life. He's used to being in control, used to being rational, used to being an independent, self-sufficient man who doesn't need anyone. But when he falls in love, all those beliefs begin to waver. Love doesn't ask if you're ready. It comes like a sudden rain, awakening the lands inside that have been dry for so long. And at that moment, the man isn't just in love with you, he's being awakened by that feeling. He begins to wonder, why did she touch the part of me that I didn't show anyone? Why do I feel like I really want to open up? Why does her withdrawal hurt me when I thought I didn't need anyone? Those questions are not weakness. They are the first steps to awakening. In the journey of individuation, love is no longer a goal, but a means. It is the mirror that best reflects what is unfinished inside us. Loving someone deeply can bring a person face to face with old wounds, with the fear of abandonment, with the memory of rejection, with the softness that has been buried. But instead of running away, this journey invites them to go straight to the heart of what has been forgotten, and find maturity in the very place that seems to be weakness. A man on this journey will go through many stages: doubt, struggle, sometimes denying his own feelings, then returning. He may disappear for a while, not because he no longer loves, but because that love is forcing him to face himself in a way he has never known. But if given enough space, if not forced, if he feels safe to explore himself, he will return, no longer a conflicted man, but a man who dares to name his feelings with honesty. With the woman by his side, this is not an easy journey. The contradictions, the distance, the defensive reactions can be painful. But if you are deep enough to understand that you are standing next to an awakening soul, you will no longer need immediate reassurance. You will see the truth in small actions, in the way he cannot ignore you when you are sad, in the way he reacts when you are away, in the way he remembers every detail, without being able to explain why. And the magic is, when a man dares to go on a journey of personalization, love is no longer about possession or fear of loss. It becomes a meeting place, not of two egos but of two souls. The relationship at this time is not just a place to fill loneliness, but a space for healing, for growing together. Personalization is never a straight path. It is full of twists and turns, sometimes moving forward, sometimes retreating. But if love is still there, silently living in every choice, every look, every return, then that is a sign of a love that is growing with awakening. And you, by your presence, are not only the person he loves, but also the companion on his journey back to himself. There are loves that do not begin with confessions, nor do they blossom through promises. They begin with contradictions, with hesitant glances, with silences that are difficult to name. These are loves that are growing from the unconscious, not yet clearly perceived, but already present, already alive, already silently blooming in every action, every unintentional gesture. And if you are sensitive enough to realize that, you will find yourself not only being loved, but also witnessing a profound journey. The journey of a man learning to name his true feelings. You will realize that love is not always clear and distinct. Sometimes it comes in hesitation, in confusion, in the way he cares without being able to explain why. He may not say, "I love you," but he appears when you need him. He may not name the relationship, but he remembers every little detail about you, feels uncomfortable when you are cold, and feels empty when you are absent. That is when love has begun, but is not yet conscious. And you, if you are quiet enough to listen, will see that you are standing before something very real, very deep, a feeling that is gradually rising from the deepest part of his soul. In that moment, your role is no longer that of waiting for an answer, but of a witness. A person standing next to a soul that is changing, a person listening to the very faint sound of love rising, and your presence, your calmness, your lack of haste, is the safe space for that love to grow. But being a witness does not mean sacrificing yourself or enduring an ambiguous relationship. On the contrary, it requires a great deal of inner stability to not be swept away by the waves of emotions, to not need everything to be clear immediately, but to still maintain faith in what is forming. Because you know, there are loves that need time to manifest. There are hearts that need a journey to dare to love consciously. Your presence is a gift. When you see what he does not see, when you do not rush him to name your feelings, but let them rise up, grow by themselves, you are creating the conditions for that love to become real, not through words, but through touching the deepest part of his being. And then one day, he himself, the one who once hesitated, denied, feared, will return, no longer conflicted, no longer avoiding. He will not only love you, but will know that he is in love. He will not only be present physically, but with his whole awakened soul. Love then is no longer vague, but becomes a conscious choice, a complete, total dedication. Such love does not come from demands. It comes from understanding. It does not blossom in promises, but in times of overcoming the darkness together. And when you can stay, not lose yourself, not hastily retreat out of fear, then that love will have a completely different meaning. It is not just a relationship between two people, but a journey of two souls on the way back to themselves. You are not just the person he loves. You are the one who is present when that love is learning to speak for the first time. And that alone is enough to make the connection between the two of you sacred. Because in a world that is hasty and full of brokenness, perhaps the most beautiful thing is not love that is loudly declared, but love that is gradually recognized, in silence, in understanding, and in growing together.